Okay, well, as some of you will know, as you all know, that I've come here to talk about hope, but of course not as a theologian or a philosopher, but as a political activist for Palestine. So this is in no way a traditional sermon. It's more a distillation of some basic ideas about hope and how they apply to the Palestine and Israel situation. They're a starting point for a discussion. So I'll talk for about a quarter of an hour, and then maybe we can open it to all of you. I think two things maybe give me an excuse for accepting Guy's invitation to come here and speak in a Christian church. The first is that I was brought up in a staunchly Methodist household, so I have a well-ingrained Christian background. And secondly, I shall be relying on a Christian Palestinian seminal document, this one, A Moment of Truth, which is also called the more well-known, called the Kairos Palestine document, which was sent to all churches in the world in 2009. So let me begin at the beginning with a beloved quote from St. Paul in his first letter to the disciples in Corinth, where he proposes the central attributes of the Christian faith. And I am, of course, quoting from 1 Corinthians 13, verse 13, where Paul concludes his great message of love with these words: "Now abides faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love." Well, today we are looking at the second of those three greatest virtues of the Christian faith, hope. Hope is maybe the dominating virtue of this time of Advent, because it's a period of looking forward, of the pregnant expectation of new life, most especially for the birth of the baby who revealed God to the world. Hope isn't an option for Christians. It's a necessity. It's a Christian duty. I guess in every age, hope has been sorely tested. For example, the horrors of trench warfare during the First World War, which we have been so intensely commemorating this year, led to a major loss of hope and faith among soldiers. And in the Second World War, the mass extermination of all sorts of groups that were not acceptable to the Nazis proved the depths of barbarism to which even the most civilized of nations can sink. And there was little hope there. And on an individual level, we may be so sorely tested by life's circumstances that we give up hope. And the statistics for suicide and for severe depression indicate the widespread nature of personal crisis. Hope is a necessity for human life, whether we are Christian or not. And if it's lost, we are in serious trouble, both as individuals and as nations. But when we look at the last 68 years in that little strip of land at the far end of the Mediterranean, that was taken from the native people of Palestine and given to the Jews of the world by the United Nations as their homeland, that little strip that's known to all of the three great monotheistic religions as the Holy Land, then it's very difficult to see grounds for hope of any resolution to this conflict. And when I give talks about my experiences of being there and of the nature of the entrenched oppression, I struggle against leaving my audience without hope, because to leave people without hope is a sin, and it paralyzes people. So I always look for inspiration to the Palestinian people themselves, those who have to live their daily lives under that oppression without having any choice. They have a word for it in Arabic, which doesn't quite equate with any word in English, but can best be described as steadfastness. And you may know that this word is sumud. It means, among other things, the strength of going on resisting evil, retaining the positivity and determination of hope, when you can't see where it will lead, and when you don't know how long the darkness will last. I've met sumud in many, many Palestinians, and it's a remarkable quality. I'll give you two illustrations of that quality, which also point to the reason for sumud. And the first illustration is taken from this little book called The Wall Museum. The wall being the apartheid wall built by the Israelis around both the West Bank and Gaza. And this museum is actually a series of about 60 different statements that have been stapled to the wall in the north of Bethlehem. And I'm going to read, and they're all written by the women of the Bethlehem area. And I'm going to read the one called Roots here, and it's by a Bethlehemite called Odette. She says, and it's on the wall, "I can't imagine myself to be away from this land. My parents are in the United States, and they are always trying to encourage me and push me to join them in their freedom. As for me, I don't know if that is the kind of freedom I'm looking for. My roots are here in Bethlehem, and my future is also here in this holy land. Here, I have my Palestinian ID, my relatives, my house, my land. Here, where the olive trees have such strong roots that no one in the world can uproot them." And another quotation is from a young man I know in the village that Liverpool Friends of Palestine are twinned with, and many of you will know that it is Bilain in the West Bank. And Hamdi Abu Rahma recently published this book of his photographs and his text, which is a very moving introduction to the occupation, and it's called Roots Run Deep. And I have some copies of it here if you're interested. This book, and I'm quoting from his introduction. There's a photograph of him here at the beginning. Yes, there's a photograph of Hamdi with his gas mask on and a row of Israeli soldiers behind him during the weekly demonstrations they have there. But he says, excuse me, he says in the introduction to his book, "This book shares a collection of images that reflect the truth of our lives from the joys to the sorrows, hence the title. The roots of our hearts run deep into the land that we belong to." Kairos also vividly expresses it. In this document, which I shall quote from a little bit, there is a most striking statement which says, we cry out from within the suffering of our country with a cry of hope in the absence of all hope. Now that's an extraordinary statement which I'm trying to unpick a little bit. Sumud and hope are closely linked. They were the qualities that were practiced in the same land 2,000 years ago, when a beloved teacher, thanks very much, thank you, Sumud and hope were the qualities practiced 2,000 years ago when the beloved teacher, guru, leader, the Son of God, was crucified under the jurisdiction of another cruel imperialist power. It is the steadfastness in the shadow of the cross and of intense persecution in the following centuries that enabled the followers of Christ to establish his church, his community on earth. There was nothing more hopeless than that first Easter time. But hope lies at the very heart of the Christian message. And here we are in Advent, full of expectation and hope of new life. It's Easter, however, in the midst of overwhelming suffering, that enables us to see the possibilities for change and for new life where none seemed possible. And that is precisely what enables Palestinian Christians to stay with their faith and in their land of apparent hopelessness today. And let's be clear what we're talking about. And I'll quote here from Kairos, but through this leaflet. So this is a quotation from the Kairos document. The reality on the ground is one of Israeli occupation and all that results from this situation, the dehumanizing effect of the separation wall, the effect of the Israeli settlements that ravage our land in the name of God and of force, humiliation at checkpoints, restrictions on religious liberty, and the suffering of Jerusalem where homes are being demolished and expropriated. We declare that the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land is a sin against God and humanity because it deprives the Palestinians of their basic human rights. Let's not divide the Palestinians, Christians, and Muslims, for the vast majority are, of course, Muslim. And they all suffer from the same oppression. As I said earlier, hope is a fundamental need of the human psyche, and it exists in all peoples, whatever their faith. Everyone needs peace and justice, or at least the hope of peace and justice in order to flourish and to be fully human. And hope is what Jewish society also needs. They too struggle with hopelessness. The hopelessness of resignation to what some of them call endless war. In other words, the belief that there is something inevitable about conflict and hatred that they perceive themselves as being surrounded by. The hopelessness that causes others to bury their heads in the sands of their beautiful Mediterranean coastline, refusing to look at what's happening in their name just a few miles down the road. Hopelessness that causes them to look for their security only in force of arms and in the ever more right-wing nationalist and racist political parties. Clearly, this type of collective behavior, which is very widespread in Israel, is the product of despair, of hopelessness, and it's very dangerous. Hope for a better future for themselves won't come from that direction. Hope lies in seeing the other, not as the eternal and inevitable enemy, but as human beings like themselves, with exactly the same needs, aspirations, and hopes, and then working painfully and with humility to bring about a just solution for both of them, that both of them needs and longs for in the same land. And that is the Palestinian Christian message for Western Christians too. Hope must be translated into action to become effective in the world. And I'll finish with the Kairos message to our Christian brothers and sisters. Hope within us means, first of all, our faith in God. And secondly, our expectation that despite everything, we believe in a better future. Thirdly, it means not chasing illusions. We realize that release is not close at hand. We see nothing in the present or the future except ruin and destruction. We call on Christians everywhere in this time of trial. Our question for our brothers and sisters in the church today is, are you able to help us get our freedom back? For this is the only way that you can help the two peoples attain justice, peace, security, and love. In the absence of all hope, we cry out this cry of hope. We believe that God's goodness will finally triumph over the evil of hate and death. Be patient, steadfast, and full of hope. Right, that's what I have to say. I have brought a small selection of literature here under 7 different headings. I think 2, 4, 6. Yes, there are 7 different cards, which suggesting 7 ways of making hope tangible to ourselves and for the people of Palestine and Israel. And there's some literature with most of them that you can look at and take away. That's for afterwards, because right now I think we can have a few minutes of open discussion, questions. And it was suggested that you might like to divide into 2 small groups, or you might like to stay as one. I don't know, it's up to you.
Possibly because we're smaller in number today, we could stay as one. Yeah.
Yes? So it's over to you, friends. If I've stimulated any questions or any comments that you can take forward this discussion, because that's what it is.
What the Kairos document is asking for is for the churches to support the BDS movement, boycott, divestment and sanctions. And I'm finding some hope at the practical level, because every day there seems to be news of somebody else buying into that across the world. There is reason for hope. It worked with South Africa, eventually. And if the present momentum behind the BDS movement continues, then we may see progress.
Yes, indeed. It's the progress of the international community putting peaceful and non-violent pressure on Israel. This is through BDS, boycott, divestment and sanctions. It's a very political topic. But this is where hope, that certainly the Palestinians believe that hope will come from that direction, from putting pressure on Israel itself which is the intransigent partner. So there is a call for, and that's something we can all take part in, because every time we go to a supermarket, if you look at where herbs and some fruit and vegetables come from, you will often see product of Israel. And so that movement is asking people not to buy Israeli products. Of course, there are also
companies like Coca-Cola, Marks and Spencer's, people, organisations and companies that give money to Israel.
That's right.
But it's like Nestle. You can say, I'm going to boycott Nestle, or I'm going to stop buying Israeli goods, but the tendrils are just everywhere.
Yes, they are.
Tangled up.
Yes, they are. You know, Veolia is contracted by our council to collect rubbish, but Veolia also collects the rubbish of West Bank settlements, the illegal settlements on the West Bank. And it's also involved, it has been involved in the building of the light railway through Jerusalem, which links Jerusalem with the illegal settlements, again, in the West Bank. So and G4S is a security company employed by Liverpool, but also installing and running the security of Israeli prisons, which imprison sometimes indefinitely Palestinian people, and which are responsible, of course, for the torture and humiliation and maltreatment of Palestinians, including children. So yes, you're absolutely right, Rose, that these things are everywhere, and that's why Liverpool Friends of Palestine challenged the council and also write to companies and they write to the council to stop them from to persuade them from not contracting to those companies. And those companies, a lot of those companies, of course, have lost billions of pounds because of lost contracts.
You mentioned the United Nations' role in the creation of Israel. Do you know what the United Nations is doing about Israel and Palestine conflict today?
Well, I know that there have been more United Nations resolutions criticising Israel than against any other country, and there have been right down through the last 60 years. I also know that, if a resolution comes to the Security Council, it has to be acted upon. But in the Security Council, Israel has its staunch ally in America. And America has stopped, because of its threat to use the veto, a Security Council resolution has to be unanimous. And if one of the 5 permanent members, which includes the United States, of course, if they say they're going to oppose a resolution, to veto, then it will fail. So they have vetoed or they've threatened to veto time after time after time when a really good resolution has come for action against Israel. I also know, of course, that the United Nations has, since 1948, run the services for education and health in both, particularly in Gaza, but also throughout the West Bank, and it gives food aid to Palestinians. And so it also has its human rights office in Jerusalem, where it monitors the violations of human rights. And if you read UN documents, it's absolutely clear what is happening. Gross violations of human rights in every field, whether it be the treatment of prisoners, or even the arrest themselves of prisoners, or what is happening on the land, or in any field. The United Nations criticises Israel. in writing, in its reports, yes. But the problem is that Israel makes very sure that America is on board. And that is why Israel is so powerful in America, because it uses its money and its influence, its Jewish influence in the States, to make sure that America stays on side with it in the international arena. And that really stymies effective action by the United Nations. And by Europe as well, since there are signs of hope there, though. There are signs of movement that Europe is breaking that mould. You saw in our own Parliament not long ago an overwhelming vote to recognise Palestine as a state, because we're not just talking about individual rights, we're talking about national rights. It wasn't a vote that will bind the government to anything, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And a similar vote has been taken in the French and the Spanish parliaments and has overwhelmingly been supported. And of course Sweden has already decided that the government will recognise Palestine. So yes, these are signs of hope within Europe. And there is a push now to debate the whole issue of whether Palestine should be recognised as a state within the European Parliament itself, and that's a good sign of hope. Yes, you can see them, little shoots springing up all over the place.
We also need to lobby David Cameron. God, that man the other day saying he stood side by side with Israel. I thought, well, don't ever vote for him. Sorry. You know, we have to deal with him very severely.
And
he doesn't want to face up. And we give military aid to Israel.
To Israel, yes.
We're training our police force. Sorry, the Israeli army is training our police force in tackling protesters.
Yes, that's the downside, that there is a very strong integration of security and cooperation between, and of course the sale of arms, both ways.
On a personal level, Gwen, the people that you know over there, the Palestinian people, what keeps their hope alive, and what does a personal connection bring? Because I think you visit quite often.
I think what keeps their hope alive is what was indicated by those two quotations that I read, and that is they do have the deepest of connections with the land itself. And most Palestinians, even those who live in cities and are professional people and live quite a Western lifestyle, most of them will have a connection to a village somewhere or other which has olive trees and which has land. Most Palestinians are farmers, or most Palestinian families have farmers within them. They're still very connected with the land itself, and of course they've always been there. They've always been there, and I guess. You know, if we were under the same pressure, we would also refuse to move from our land. Why should we go somewhere else when we'd always lived there and our ancestors have always lived there? So I see that. And of course, most Palestinians are deep believers, either through Islam or through Christianity. And so they find strength and faith through that, yes. What was the second part of your
personal connection, the people that you visit, and their sense of knowing in the West, or
Yes, I mean I'm inspired by just their the personal connection that I've witnessed, I mean, they are just very, very strong people. But they are also, I think people who go there say this, that they don't find any hatred of Jews. And that is truly amazing. They are absolutely firm that no one is going to take their land from them. But this does not lead to a personal hatred of Jews. It leads to a hatred of Israeli government policies. And on an individual level and on a national level, there isn't any hatred which wants to take revenge. Now, I don't say that everybody is like that, but those people that I've met, and I think Jan will bear this out, and so I've heard lots of Western people say it's just amazing that they don't actually hate their enemy, the people who are trying to take their land and their homes. Not just their land, but their actual homes. So many thousands, 26,000 homes have been demolished and are being demolished every single day. And literally a few hours' notice given, and families just have to watch while their houses are destroyed in front of them. That's it. So no doubt that kind of experience might lead to some hatred, but I haven't met it. I really haven't, and I've talked to people about this.
Gwen, there's just been in Bethlehem the international conference on Kairos Bethlehem, not celebrating, but reflecting back since 2009 when it was first launched.
Yes.
So that's just recently finished, that conference, so there will be some reports coming in.
To the churches here?
I pray so, yes.
Yes.
And Charlotte, who is the part-time person for Kairos Britain, whom I know, she has been out there, so we're hoping to bring her, we are bringing her, Friends of Seville, North West region, bringing her to here in March. And I'll get the details.
Oh, right.
We've got a meeting tomorrow to discuss the details.
Right. Thank you, Jan. Yes.
And she will share
yes.
what happened in Bethlehem.
And there is some Sabeel literature here. Sabeel being an Arabic word meaning clear water, the spring. Yes. There is some here if you want it. Yes.
I've got some of your leaflets which you're going to distribute, re-Bethlehem.
Yes. I have.
Oh, it'd be really good.
I can leave some here. Every year, Liverpool Friends of Palestine leaflet outside the two cathedrals during Advent at various services. And I think David's going to do some this afternoon. Hope so. In the rain. I was out in the pouring rain at the Catholic Cathedral the other night, and yes, I will leave some of those leaflets here. But also those leaflets are distributed among many churches. I mean, and I send them to people, my contacts all over the country. So that's a sign of hope within the church. And the two deans at the two cathedrals, well, I don't know whether they're supportive or not, but they don't object. They know that we do it, and I am in touch with them every year. They know that we do it, and they don't object, which is also a sign of hope. Right. Thank you.